This episode of the Digital Desperados podcast is brought to you by SaferNet VPN, found online at safernet.com.
Welcome to the Digital Desperados podcast featuring dark tales from the web. Patrick McMurphy back today to tell us another dark tale, and he's joined by Brad Hawkins, founder and CEO of SaferNet, online at safernet.com. I'm Jim Brangenberg, and I'll serve as your, crowd control. This podcast, of course, brought to you by SaferNet. You've heard a lot about SaferNet, but have you checked it out online? Safernet.com. When you have a VPN, your internet access speeds up substantially. Why? Because it's fighting the bad guys that are trying to come in and scam you all the time and constantly trying to jam up your computer. Just for the VPN alone, you should sign up for SaferNet. Go online to safernet.com, that's safernet.com, and get secured today. Patrick McMurphy, which dark tale are you tell us about today?
Well, today, Jim, I want to talk about DarkSide. So DarkSide is not only the name of a certain type of ransomware, it's also the name of the group behind ransomware. So they're a hacking group, and they're also a RAS business, and I'll explain what that is in a second, or AAS. So RAS is first identified in August 2020. They're Russian guys, and they used to be members of a group called something called Revil, who were also doing ransomware. And so let me explain what ransomware is and what RAS is, because without knowledge of those two, the rest of this makes no sense. So ransomware is one of the most popular forms of malware. So what happens, in very basic terms, if you have ransomware in your computer will effectively lock up. And you'll see a screen saying, hello, your computer is locked. We have all your information. Please send Bitcoin to this address. And we'll send you a decryptor tool, and then you're scot-free. There's like chat windows and things like that, so you can actually communicate to whoever put it there in the first place. And so ransomware is very difficult to create. It's one of the more advanced forms of malware. There's a lot of malware that's kind of kiddie, a lot of people could write little pieces of malware, but ransomware is really difficult. And so with that in mind, if you're a hacker and you are a team of hackers and you've done some things, but you can't really write your own ransomware, how could you get access to it? And so there's something called RAS. So you might know from business, there's SaaS, software as a service. There's also RAS, which is ransomware as a service. And so the guys...
So they made a business model out of this. Ransomware as a service.
The underworld business model and the enterprise that people don't know is going on the whole time, but I'm telling you what it is.
I wondered if that's what RAAS was going to be after. I know what SAAS. I'm like, ransomware as a service. We're just trying to help people. That's all we're doing.
So DarkSide are businessmen / criminals, and they have this piece of ransomware called DarkSide. So they have affiliates, and so to become an affiliate, you go through
the franchises across the world,
but they have a very strict interview. These guys are very uptight. These are not just some guys you contact on a forum. They cover everything. So they have a system. For example, they obviously get a share of the ransom payments. If you buy DarkSide off them and use it on something and you get payment, you have to pay DarkSide themselves. So they get 25% for ransoms under $500,000 and 10% for those over 5 million. And so that's the kind of the core of their business model. So when you interview with them and you're granted access, you're actually given this, they've created this administration portal where if you want to target a very specific business, you can create your own form of DarkSide specifically for this business. So these guys are really,
so they're like white labeling it. So they're white label. Yeah, so you can put your own name on it. It's white label. Wow, it's very nice of these guys.
Yeah, so there will always be a, down the bottom, made by DarkSide 2020 or something,
But it's white labeled. The Jim Brangenberg, ransomware kind of. I could white label my own ransomware. Nice. And, exactly. and what's really interesting is, so they got a franchise network where they're getting overrides or a franchise sharing agreement. They have a franchise sharing agreement, and they have white labeling of the software. Wow, these guys are good.
Yeah, they are good. And I'll tell you, I wrote extensively about cybersecurity in 2020, and I used to write about DarkSide many times a week. And, I think I've typed the words DarkSide so many times that I started getting like Google advertisements on like Star Wars merchandise because it said the word DarkSide. So these guys were everywhere.
Come over to the dark side, Patrick.
100%. Now, they had something in their ransomware, and you do see this often, but we haven't mentioned it before. They actually check if you get infected with this. The first thing they do is that they check the language of your system. So if you have English, it infects. If your system is in Russian, it doesn't affect. It does nothing. So they're not trying to, and a lot of hackers do this. They don't target Russian computers because they know the FSB will be in the door in 2 minutes. So.
Really, are they Russian?
Yeah. So they're Russian, but they also the group that they came from, Revil, they're all Russian as well. So, but they're not associated with the FSB yet, as we know anyway.
So there's a code. There's an honor code.
Yeah,
We'll screw anybody, but not a Russian.
Yeah, very nationalistic honor code, basically.
It's a fear code.
Yeah, it's a fear code. It's exactly what it is. But they gain entry to target networks. There's a couple of means. First is phishing, especially to steal credentials. Then exploiting unpatched software vulnerabilities. We saw this in our last episode with Udi. And then, of course, they're utilizing very legitimate penetration testing tools, which are very common if you're getting a company tested, but hackers can actually use them even if they're legitimate. Once they're inside a network, they kind of just make the system think that they are the owner, so they can laterally move across an entire network. Now, as well, and this part is important to remember, before they actually deploy the ransomware, they siphon out copies of all the data for something called double extortion. That is DarkSide used to do all the time. And so if you have a business and you've ransomware and all your systems are frozen and you're using the chat window to talk to the hackers, and you say, oh, do you know what? I'm not going to pay it. And the hackers will say, okay, well, we have all your data. So if you check our website, we just published, 10% of your information, and we're going to publish the other 90% if you don't pay up. So they were always applying pressure by doing this, but it's I was going to say it's a good move. Obviously, it's a terrible thing to do, but it's a good hacking.
It's a good business move.
It's a business move, completely. And so DarkSide, really, they only want to target high revenue organizations, but they have a very corporate style of communication. They actually issue a lot of press releases and statements. This is why it was great writing about them, because you never had to wonder what they were up to. They would have like daily updates on who they're hacking. It was brilliant. They claimed that they would avoid targeting sectors like healthcare and education, and they positioned themselves as apolitical. They specifically said that they're focused solely on profit. Now we know actually use a lot of their winnings, not a lot, but they lose some of their winnings for charity, namely Children International, that's a child support charity, and the Water Project, which is water access in sub-Saharan Africa. So these guys are kind of different from other groups we've seen.
So they're philanthropic too.
In a way, but they were,
So it's almost Robin Hood-esque.
Exactly. What Robin Hood in a Lamborghini, But
so it's a franchise model that allows white labeling, which has a Robin Hood feature that can be implemented.
Exactly.
So Patrick, on these scenarios, if a company goes in and they go through the ransomware process, they first say no, they start publishing their data, they go ahead and pay the ransomware, they release the computers and they're back up and running. What kind of a guarantee, or is there any kind of a guarantee that they just don't go and turn it on again and go through the same process? I mean, obviously that RAS DarkSide software is in their system.
Yeah, I mean, the first step would be like a complete clean of all the systems, complete reinstallation of everything and having people there to make sure things are entirely clean. But then probably more importantly is putting in defenses to make sure another RAS software doesn't come at you, a week later. So
that's why you need
But there is ways of getting that completely off.
Yeah. In a lot of cases, there has been instances in the past in history where there's been ransomware so advanced that you basically just throw the computer out the window is the best bet.
It's called reformat your hard drives. But that's why SaferNet's so important, Brad, right? I mean, SaferNet could keep these people out, right? I mean,
exactly. And that's actually where, SaferNet shines, is to be able to avoid these ransomwares from being able to access your device. And even if, let's just say that somebody opens up a bad email that comes in, and they access a link that brings in a Trojan or does whatever it is that they're delivering that ransomware through, it might be that computer gets trashed. It might be, but as Patrick says, you take the computer, throw it out the window, and it doesn't penetrate the entire network. They don't get access to everything, and so. But yes, we are very good at being able to stop ransomware attacks for sure.
It's why doing a backup is also very important. You know, they say that even Jesus saves. So it's very important that you do a backup, because if you get ransomware, I got ransomware back in, 2015. I think I got it. No, it was probably 2013. I got a ransomware attack. Somebody from within our organization sent out an attachment. And of course, looked legitimate, and I clicked on it, and I noted it right away and was able to shut my computer off immediately. And I just reformatted and restored my backup, and it was fine because I could do that. So it was just unbelievable, but painful. Took an entire day out of my schedule to wipe it. So not worth it doing. That's why you need to have good software. Back then, SaferNet wasn't available.
That's true.
All right, so we go into the philanthropic side, Patrick McMurphy, where they're now supporting child support charity and the water project in the sub-Saharan Africa. These guys are good guys.
Yeah, not fully, but so the US, as you can imagine, it's by far the biggest targeted country by DarkSide. There's more than 500 detections, and then that's followed by France, Belgium, and Canada. Their biggest target really was insurance firms. They made millions off insurance firms. They're just these guys. Insurance, do not get into insurance if you don't like hackers, because you will get targeted straight away. So despite their moral code, as it happens, a lot of affiliates ended up using DarkSide on healthcare providers. I actually remember specifically in Ireland it happening on the health service executive, which is the government health service, and that got completely busted by DarkSide. Now, however, if a healthcare service did get hit and they paid, DarkSide would actually return the payments and they would cut off the affiliate. So there's something to be said here.
So again, that honor code, there's honor among thieves.
There's something. And in fact, there's actually, and this is a very murky thing, and maybe there's a whole other episode about this, but there is actually a hackers court. There is a court in the dark web on if an affiliate was seen to be doing something against the code, there would be a judge, there would be jurors, everything. So there's a whole world operating there, you know. But one of the largest attacks outside the US, yeah, it's wild. But the largest attack outside the US was Brenntag. They're a German chemical company. They demanded 7.5 million euro, but it was negotiated to 4.4 million. Again, these guys, they can be bartered with, but it's still, 4.5 million euros. So the big attack, what put them in not just the hacking headlines, but in general newspapers, they had the big attack against Colonial Pipeline. And the reason they got into Colonial Pipeline was one of the employees of Pipeline, they had a remote VPN to connect in, and they were just reusing the same password. So they probably had a password called like pass1235, and that was like, oh, let's just reuse that for everything. And so his information would have got out in something else, and they're like, oh, this will hardly work. And of course it worked, because people will log into their company VPNs with the silliest passwords ever. So DarkSide get into Colonial, and they immediately begin encrypting. At the time, they were initially looking for $5 million. The ransomware didn't initially affect operational technology. However, Colonial Pipeline shut down its entire pipeline to contain the attack. And now Pipeline, for the first time in 57 years of its history, had to halt operations. Now, they did pay the ransomware within hours to kind of minimize disruption, but it might have been too late, because DarkSide provided the decryptor, and it was functional, but it was very, very inefficient. It was very slow in actually decrypting everything, and Pipeline had already slowed down. So Colonial Pipeline, they supply 45% of fuel consumed on the US East Coast, so gasoline, diesel, even jet fuel. So the shutdown, it interrupted fuel deliveries to 17 states, huge amount of panic buying, fuel shortages. I think that was the fuel prices, they spiked to highest levels since 2014. Again, shortages everywhere, even the Department of Transport, they had a temporary waiver, and they actually allowed trucks to transport fuel to affected regions. It was chaos. It was all over them. It was complete disaster. Now, following the attack, because again, DarkSide love the press releases, they said in a release, we are not apolitical, or we are I was going to say we are not apolitical, but they actually said, we are apolitical. We do not participate in geopolitics. Our goal is to make money, not creating problems for society. But obviously they have created I know, isn't it very sweet of them? So the Department of Justice at this point are like, okay, we got to get on these guys. So they get the FBI, other agencies, they want to neutralize DarkSide at this point.
Wow. I just, Brad, how does that, I mean, it's got to make you feel good, because SaferNet being, your baby, you can help companies like, wow, if Colonial Pipeline be a great client for you.
Honestly, it is very, very exciting to think about how many ransomware attacks we've stopped, and you don't even know, because there's so many attempts, and so you're exactly right. It does make us feel really good. We have amazing people behind the scenes, amazing developers. They're always working on top of it, trying to figure out exactly what society needs to be as safe as we can get them. So yes, it is very, very exciting. It's fun to be able to see that. But by the way, I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I just came out with a new book that kind of talks about some of these things. It's called God, the Devil, and the Internet. And it just talks about the whole story behind, where things come from, how do things pop up, who's motivating behind it. And then, of course, talks a little bit about a very, very good solution.
God, the Devil, and the Internet by Brad Hawkins. You can find it online, I'm sure, at Amazon, right, Brad?
That's correct, yeah.
All right, back to you, Patrick McMurphy, to close out this. The FBI gets involved, the Department of Justice.
Everyone. So June 7, 2021, I was going to say VPN. The FBI, there's too many names in this.
Phoebe.
They announced that they recover 63.7 Bitcoin, which at the time is 2.3 million, from a wallet. They basically trace it through a Bitcoin ledger. And this is the funny part, really funny part. This was due that DarkSide actually had very poor operational security in managing their wallets. So that is to say, a very renowned hacking group had very bad cybersecurity. Despite the fact their whole role is to take advantage of other people doing the same, their cybersecurity was terrible. Could have DarkSide used SafeNet? Probably somehow, but it's a good thing that they did.
SaferNet.com.
Protect your hacking businesses today. No, but so DarkSide had a last press statement. They said, due to pressure from the US, they're shutting down operations and that they were closing the affiliate program. Very upsetting. And so they shut down. They disbanded, but immediately two factions split off called Black Matter and Black Cat. And so you have to think about this, okay? So DarkSide came from Revil. Revil actually come from something called Zeus, and Zeus from something else. And then with DarkSide, there's Black Matter and Black Cat. So these things never end. This is like a family tree. They get more sophisticated, more advanced. Different people come in, old members stay, some get arrested, others are working for the FSB at this point. So this isn't just a story about a ransomware group. It's kind of this narrative about they have this whole family tree, and there's this huge cybercrime enterprise. They have their own court. They can adapt, they can reband, they can profit despite, all this global law enforcement. They will always resurface. It's like the Hydra. You can cut off the head of one, but 10 more are going to appear. So
it's like an entire ecosystem all in and of itself.
Well,
if you're able to shut it down, I don't know how you would, because you'd have to go to multiple countries and but
absolutely.
Yeah. Franchising system with white labeling available and philanthropic opportunities. Go to darkside.com. Just kidding. All right. So, the beautiful part is you heard it here. And here's the deal. Don't click on links from people you don't know. And if somebody didn't tell you they were sending you a document, don't click on the document, because that's how ransomware gets in. You heard it here. The internet and everything digital can have a dark side. Dark side with so many dark players like DarkSide. It's why you need SaferNet by your side. VPN, antivirus, web filters, so much more. Thanks to SaferNet for supporting our efforts to bring these stories to your ears and giving them the exposure that they need. For your own security and security of those you love and those you work with, check out cybercrime.com and get secured today. And again, don't click on the attachments. If you don't know that somebody sent you something, don't click on it. Just don't do it. Or you may become the next victim of a digital desperado.
This episode of the Digital Desperados podcast is brought to you by SaferNet VPN, found online at cybercrime.com. We have an app for that? What? An app for cybersecurity for all your devices? Are you a business owner concerned about cybersecurity? SaferNet VPN offers the perfect solution. Protect your company and family with a single app. With our cloud-connected cybersecurity platform, enjoy VPN, internet controls, and virus protection. Stay safe online with SaferNet VPN today. Get secured now. Sign up at cybercrime.com. That's cybercrime.com.